Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Muhammad. I am your moderator for today, insha'Allah. I will give Dr. Sharif the pleasure of introducing our esteemed guest today. And inshallah, I'll be making sure that things go smoothly to the best of my ability. Please do feel free to drop any questions in the chat function. And while our guests are coming in, please do mention your name and the country that you're in at the moment, inshallah, so that we keep this a little bit more interesting. And over to Mr. Sharif for the intro.
Jazakallah khair, barakallah feek, akhi. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I know it's probably maybe most of the places are actually now in holiday. Today is a Christmas day, and we thought probably maybe to do it on Sunday when everybody from the Far East and the Far West as well are free. I mean, we have the pleasure today really to have Professor Ihsan Karaman from Turkey to give us the first talk for this new initiative. It's a project we've been thinking about it for a while on the history of Islamic medicine, which is part of the FIMA activities. FIMA is a Federation of Islamic Medical Associations. Professor Ihsan Karaman, he's a very well known, mashallah. He's a urologist as a profession. He graduated from Istanbul Medical Faculty in 1986, and he worked in many hospitals and universities. He also currently director of urology department in Medistate Hospital in Istanbul. Also, on the other side, he's held PhD degree in history and medical ethics, and he's the chairman of the medical ethics and history department in Istanbul Health Technology University. And mashallah, he's the founder also of the Doctor Worldwide in Turkey. And more importantly, he's the past president of the Federation of Islamic Medical Associations, FIMA, and he's been quite active. He's attended many meetings and exco meetings. I know him for over 5 years, mashallah. I've been attending a few meetings on the history of Islamic medicine. Recently, we had one in the summertime in Istanbul. I'm not going to take too long because we'll be hearing a quite interesting topic. This is going to be the first presentation, insha'Allah, run by the HIM, by the History of Islamic Medicine project. And Professor Ihsan Karaman is going to give us some overview on this glorious history of Islamic medicine. It's all for you, Professor Ihsan.
Jazakumullah khair. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Dear moderator, Akhi Sharif Al-Ghazal, and valuable participants from all over the world of this tonight's webinar. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I would like to share my slides on the screen just in a few minutes. Is it okay now? You can see my slides now?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
you can see that, so we can hear you nice and clear.
Okay. It is my honor and privilege to be giving the first lecture or the first presentation of this series under the title of FIMA History of Islamic Medicine Project, under the leadership of our brother Sharif Al-Ghazal. And before going into the details of today's presentation, I would like to give a brief historical background of the formation, so-called formation of the Islamic medicine in the history. The supporters of Patriarch Nestorius exiled from Byzantium, and then they settled in Urfa, Mardin, Baghdad, and Iran in the 5th century. When they were expelled from these settlements from Urfa and Mardin that are in the borders of modern Turkey for the time being. When they were expelled from Urfa and Mardin, they settled in Cundishapur, because Urfa and Mardin were within the borders of Byzantium as well. So the exile extended to inside Iran, to Cundishapur. These scholars, these exiled people, actually translated the ancient Greek classical books into Syriac and Arabic language. Cundishapur was inside Iran, and it became the most important science center of that period because of these translation activities of the ancient scientific books and corpus. At the same time, Cundishapur was very critically located at the intersection of Chinese, Indian, Persian, and Arab science and cultures. So the Cundishapur school was supported by the Abbasid caliphs financially. The second Abbasid caliph, Al-Mansur, when he fell ill in Baghdad, he called Jurgis Bahtishu, one of the famous physicians in Cundishapur at that time. And actually, Bahtishu family is a very famous family of scholars. Because of the success of Bahtishu for the treatment of the Caliph Al-Mansur, the whole school of Cundishapur was invited to Baghdad by the Caliph himself. Although some translations and studies were made during the Umayyad period, the real breakthrough in these activities took place during the Abbasid period in the history. The period known as the medieval period in European history, which called Dark Ages of the European history, roughly corresponds to the golden age of Islam, which is between 8th and 12th centuries. Written sources for the study of classical Islamic medicine come from a very wide geographic area stretching from Spain in the west to India in the east, and a time span of some 900 years. Medieval Islamic medicine have some unique features. One of the unusual features of the Muslims, unlike earlier empires of Rome and Byzantium, they left intact the seeds of learning which they had conquered. This fact was pivotal in the Islamic contributions to medical science, actually, and particularly as preservers of Greco-Roman medicine. We can divide medieval Islamic medicine into two parts or into two periods. The first one being translation or learning period, and the second, the following period, is copyright or production period. The first period focused on the translation of ancient works from the West, which is Greco-Roman medical studies. This first period is between 8th and 10th century. And it is also known as the accepting period because they accepted the ancient works of Roman and Greek historical medical corpuses. Translation studies carried out under the leadership of the Nestorian and Syriac scholars who were exiled, as I said before, who were exiled from Byzantium due to sectarian conflicts, which will prepare the golden age of Islamic civilization later on. We can mention some notable translators who took part in this first period between 8th and 10th century. They are mostly Nestorian and Syriac scholars and translators, actually. The first one is Bahdishu family, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago. Also, Ibn Masawayh, Hunayn ibn Ishaq, and as a Muslim scholar, Al-Kindi was among the translators in that period of time. The importance of this period from our perspective is the meeting and enrichment of Islamic medicine with ancient works. And then we came to the Baytul Hikmah, the House of Wisdom in Baghdad. Baytul Hikmah, the House of Wisdom, is a very important institution in this period between 8th and 10th century. It was founded in Baghdad by the Abbasid Caliph Al-Mansur in the beginning, and Baytul Hikmah concentrated on translation. Along with this translation, all the works belonging to the Christian West came under the protection of Islam in the East. Islamic East science owes its development to scientists of different religions and ethnic origins. We can say that Baytul Hikmah carried the wisdom of ancient Greece to the Islamic geography. And from my perspective, it is not an exaggeration to say that Baytul Hikmah in this medieval period of Islamic medicine was like an academy of sciences in this period and in this geography. And the second phase, second period of the medieval Islamic medicine is copyright or original work or production period, which took place between 10th and 12th century following the translation period. During the translation period that lasted for nearly 2 centuries, the works of Greek and Byzantine physicians such as Hippocrates, Galen, Prof of Ephesus, Dioscorides, Oribasius, and Indian Ayurvedic works such as Susruta and Jaraka were translated into Arabic, mainly in the institution of House of Wisdom, Baytul Hikmah. Actually, this very important historical institution, the Baytul Hikmah, was distracted by the Mongol invaders in Baghdad. Some history books wrote that after the Mongol invasion of Baghdad, many books inside this institution, inside Baytul Hikmah and other libraries in the Abbasid period of Baghdad, the books were thrown into the Tigris River by the Mongolian invaders, and therefore the color of the river turned blue with the ink of books. Among them were probably the invaluable medical corpus, consisted of translations from Greek and Indian literature, and also writings of scholars in Baytul Hikmah, unfortunately. So we can say that Muslim physicians have owned scientific and medical heritage of the ancient world, and also created original works by adding their own experiences, observations, and knowledge to these works in this production or copyright period. For this reason, this period is called copyright or original work period. We can mention a very famous saying in Latin in this part of my presentation, which says, nanos gigantum humeris incidentes in Latin. And Sir Isaac Newton, the famous physicist, quoted this metaphor, and in one of his letters, he wrote that if I have seen further than others, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. So we can say that this metaphor can be applied to the original work period of the medieval Islamic medicine, because they produced and added their own experiences, and they added to this new corpus, we can say, to the ancient works of Greek and Roman medical time. Physicians in this period, physicians accepted the medicine of Hippocrates and Galen and enriched ancient Greek and Roman medicine with their own experiences. So Damascus, Baghdad, Cairo, and Andalusia have been the important medical centers of this period. We can mention some great scholars or physicians of Islamic medicine in this period, in this medieval period, and we can also mention some of their books and products. One is Abu Bakr Razi. He wrote Al-Hawi Al-Mansuri. And another one is Avicenna, Ibn Sina, and his famous book Al-Qanun fi Tibb. Ali ibn Isa, he wrote Tazkirat al-Kahalin. It's an ophthalmology book, actually. And Al-Biruni, he wrote Kitab al-Saydala fi Tibb, about the medicinal herbs and pharmacy. Also, Al-Bukaysis, Abu al-Qasim al-Zahrawi. He wrote Kitab al-Tasrif and Kitab al-Jarrahiyya. And Ibn Maymun, he wrote also Al-Fusul fi Tibb. And we can also mention Ibn Usaybiyah, Ibn Rushd, Ibn Zuhur, Ibn Baitar, Ibn Nafs, among the others. The works produced in this period, I mean the original work period of medieval Islamic medicine, dominated European medicine and science for almost 600 years. Abu Bakr al-Razi, he was the author of at least 200 medical and philosophical treatises, including his unfinished masterpiece, The Continence, or Comprehensive Book of Medicine. According to Razi, just as physicians had ethical obligations to patients, also patients had an ethical duty to trust and cooperate with their physicians, which is a very important and current medical ethical principle. His major research contribution was the ability to differentiate between smallpox and measles, which he produced in 910. When we come to the time of Al-Bukaysis al-Zahrawi, he wrote a specialized guide to surgery. He was an ascetic man who devoted much of his time to working among the poor. His famous book on surgery and surgical instruments is one of the first comprehensive illustrated treatises on surgery. Bleeding, cupping, and cauterization constituted the major forms of surgical practice at his time. And then we can see in this picture three major contributors to the medicine throughout the history, who are Ibn Sina in the middle, Galen, and Hippocrates. Ibn Sina, who also known as Avicenna, he was Islam's prince of physicians. He was the first scholar to create a complete philosophical system in Arabic, indeed. The innovations that Ibn Sina brought to medicine have shown their influence in Europe and the East for long centuries. Ibn Sina's major medical text, which is known as the Canon of Medicine, or in Arabic, Kitab al-Qanun fi al-Tibb, or shortly Al-Qanun, which contained 5 sections. It became the basis for medical education in medieval and also in Renaissance Europe. Critics complain that his influence, Ibn Sina's influence, inhibited further developments because no physician was willing to challenge him, the master of philosophy, natural science, and medicine, in his time and after him as well. Ibn Nafis. As a matter of fact, it is not clear how Ibn Nafis reached his theory of the pulmonary circulation, but he was known to be critical of Galenic dogma. Like Galen, Ibn Nafis could not conduct human dissection. In his commentary, Ibn Nafis explained that religious law prohibited human dissection because mutilation of a cadaver was considered an insult to human dignity in his time. We can have some look on the other aspects of the medieval Islamic medicine, other than the authors, the physicians, the scholars, and their books. When we look at the everyday Islamic practice of medicine and other forms of healthcare at that time, we find a system established to meet the needs of a large segment of the urban Islamic populace, not just the upper class, which had been the pattern in all previous societies. All large cities in the Islamic Empire had a number of hospitals which served the general public. These hospitals, these healthcare facilities, are also known as known with different names, with different descriptions, like Darul Shifa, Darul Siha, Darul Afiyah, Darul Marda, or Bimarhana, Bimaristan, Shifaiya, or Imarhana. These institutions also functioned as the centers of medical education, much like today in a modern medical educational environment, as medical students followed preceptors on rounds to observe the treatment of patients on site. We can give some examples of the hospitals established in that time. Among them are Damascus Hospital, built by Caliph Abdul Malik, Baghdad Hospital, built by Caliph Harun al-Rashid, and Cairo Fustat Hospital, built by the Tolunoglu Ahmed, the ruler. According to Islamic teaching, Christian and Jewish physicians could treat Muslims and give them medical education. Therefore, among the physicians who lived in the golden age of Islam, Jews and Christians were in large numbers. Unfortunately, after this golden age and after the Islamic civilization and Islamic medicine was shining as a star all over the world, actually a pause came out. And these are some reasons, some factors caused the pause of Islamic science and civilization. The first one is the Crusades. The people settled far from the seas because of the Crusades, and interaction and contact with the outside decreased. The wars left the people tired, exhausted, and weary. Material and moral support for scientific pursuits disappeared. Another main factor was Mongol invasions. They were totally brutal. Libraries, madrasas, hospitals were burned out. Scientists were killed. The number of people equipped to do science decreased, and people were worried about their own lives. Silk and spice routes lost their vitality. Vitality decreased due to the Mongolian invasions. When trade decreased, the welfare level of Muslims also decreased. And scientific inventions have lost their priority due to financial constraints. And last but not the least, the sectarian conflicts among the Muslims made the Islamic world weak and tired, unfortunately. Before going into the second phase of my presentation, which will be about the Seljukian and Ottoman medicine, I would like to briefly touch upon the impact of Islamic medicine on Europe after this medieval period. Europe has tried to follow Islamic science and medicine through Andalusia since the 12th century. Some kings in Europe requested translations from Arabic to their own language. Constantine the African in Italy and Gerard of Cremona in Andalusia, Toledo, carried out translation activities. Medical students came to Andalusia, returned to Europe after completing their education, and they themselves influenced their own countries in that sense. Thus, an awakening period began in Europe in science and especially in medicine. Within a few centuries, following this awakening period in Europe, a transformation took place, which is called the Renaissance. With the fall of Andalusia, Toledo and its magnificent library passed to Europe. And the Crusades, organized in the 12th century to Islamic lands, introduced Europe to the material and scientific richness of the Islamic lands, which was transported to Europe with the actually invaders participated in the Crusades. And in the second part, I will briefly touch upon the Seljukian and Ottoman medicine following the medieval Islamic medicine periods. After the victory of Alparslan, Sultan Alparslan in Malazgirt in 1071, the doors of Anatolia opened for many Turks. By the 13th century, Anatolia has become the homeland of Turks. Cities like Konya, Kayseri, Sivas had become important centers with many mosques, bridges, madrasas, baths, and also hospitals. When we look at the Seljukian medicine in general, we will not see many written sources belonging to that period. However, the records of the hospitals and some important texts are illuminating about Seljuk medicine. The philosophy and practice of medicine is not different from the accepted teachings, established teachings in the Islamic world of that time. And as a matter of fact, the four humor, for Akhlaq Arba'ah, the four humor theory, humoral pathology, is the most commonly used approach. During the Anatolian Seljukian time, with its show of economic and cultural progress, hospitals called Darus Shifa or Darus Siha or Bimaristan were opened in every city, almost every city in Anatolia. The hospitals were generally built by the royal family and supported by various foundations. Hence, they were able to do their functions over a long period without becoming a financial burden on the state. And medical treatments in these hospitals were given free of charge to the people. We can mention some important Darush-Shifas built in this period of Selçuklu medicine. One of the famous Darush-Shifas is Kayseri Gevher Nesibe Darush-Shifa. It is the first health institution built by the Selçuks of Turkey in Anatolia. Selçukian Sultan of that time, who was Gıyasettin Keyhusrev, he had it built for his sister who died at a young age, and he named after her. It consisted of two parts. The first part, the one part, is Darush-Shifa or Shifaiye, which gives practical medical education to the students. And the second part is medical madrasa or Giyasiye, and it gives the theoretical medical education. Another important Darush-Shifa inside Anatolia is Izzeddin Keykaus Darush-Shifa in Sivas, the central Anatolia. It is the largest Selçukian hospital built in the history of Selçukian medicine. Its constitution and bylaws, dated 1220, is the only example that has survived and remained from the Selçuk period, and which is very, very valuable for us in terms of the history of medicine in general, and particularly in terms of history of Islamic medicine, of course. We can obtain general information about the architecture, functioning, working order, and physician staff of the Selçukian hospitals from these remaining constitutional bylaws. The Izzeddin Keykaus Darush-Shifa was built like a madrasa with antechambers and a courtyard. This is the picture of Izzeddin Keykaus Darush-Shifa in Sivas, in the central Anatolia. Due to its geological structure, Anatolia has rich, healthy hot water sources. These hot springs, used for healing purposes, had been mentioned since antiquity by writers such as Homer, Galen, and Strabon. Hot springs that were left from the Roman and Byzantium eras were still being used by the Turkish Selçuk state, and new springs were also opened for public use in this period. And the examples of these hot springs are hot springs in Haymana, Kızılcahamam, Yoncalı, and Kütahya. All of them are in Anatolia. Some important figures as physicians from this Selçukian medical history. One of them is Hekim Bereke or Hekim Berke. He is the first physician to write a medical book in Turkish, which is called Tuhfe-i Mübarizi. In the preface of his book, he states that he first wrote the book in Arabic under the name Lubab-ul Nukhab. Another important figure of this time is Ekmeleddin Mahjuvani. Ekmeleddin, who was introduced to Mevlana Jalaluddin Rumi as our son whose self is pure and correct, was born in Nahjuvan. We don't have the information of where he learned to become a physician and when he came to Konya. Another important physician of that time is Gazanfer Tebrizi, one of the physicians that worked with Ekmeleddin on the deathbed of Mevlana to cure himself. And Hubeish at-Tiflisi or Ibrahim at-Tiflisi, he has written about 30 books on topics such as medicine, language, literature, astrology, dream interpretations, and the pronunciation of words in the Holy Quran. When we come into the Ottoman medicine, we can analyze Ottoman medicine by dividing it into 3 different periods. The first one is classical period. Second one is familiarization of Western medicine. And the last one is modernization period. And tonight in this presentation, I will only touch upon only the classical period of Ottoman medicine within some slides. In the early Ottoman period, there were 3 main resources in the medicine. The first one is folklore based on custom. The Ottomans inherited shamanistic medical traditions from Central Asia, which Turkish tribes immigrating to the Middle East and Asia Minor brought with them. The second source is humorism inherited from antiquity, which is moral pathology or akhlaq arba, 4 hills theory. And the third one is religious medicine. And we all know that Muslims accept religious medicine as originating from the sayings and practice of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, which is called prophetic medicine or Tibbun Nabawi. And in Ottoman medicine, instead of replacing each other, the different medical systems complemented one another. Some important physicians were to mention in this classical period of Ottoman medicine were Akşemseddin. Akşemseddin was the Fatih Sultan Mehmed, the conqueror of Byzantium, his teacher, Fatih's teacher. His most famous medical work is Maddatul Hayat. Another one is Mumin bin Muqbil. Another one is Ibn Sharif, who wrote Yadigar. In his works, he mentions hygiene, symptomatology, pharmacology, and treatment. And another one is Akhi Chalabi, and he wrote Risalatul Hasatul Kilya, about the kidney and bladder stones. But I will give you some details of another important physician in this classical period of Ottoman medicine, who is Şerefeddin Sabuncuoğlu. He was an Ottoman physician in Amasya, a small city in central Anatolia. Amasya at this time served as one of the cities to which the sultans sent their young sons to learn how to govern the empire. Sabuncuoğlu worked for 14 years in the hospital of Amasya, central hospital of Amasya, which is called Amasya Amber bin Abdullah Darushifa, and he wrote his books in Turkish. 2 of his famous products, the books, are Cerrahiyetul Haniye and Mujarrabname. Cerrahiyetul Haniye is a very interesting and famous book, and the most important feature of this book is that for the first time in the history of medicine, it includes a variety of pictures made in miniature technique that show surgical interventions with a simple Turkish. It also shows a number of women performing surgeries long before women were allowed to practice medicine in the West. And another book of Şerefeddin is Mujarrabname. In this book, the drugs used in cases were categorized according to the domains of their impact and use. And I will give you a glimpse, actually, a small example from his book, from Şerafettin Sabuncuoğlu's book, and it is about the use of mandrake as an anesthetic. And the translation of his writings like that: full of the outer skin of the lufah. Lufah is mandrake, and mandragora officinalis in Latin. Full of the outer skin of the lufah, pound the core and rub it with sweet almond oil. Leave it for a day and night. whoever you want to perform surgery on, give him a dirham from this remedy while hungry. After a while, you will see that the patient fell asleep and didn't know himself. After that, you can perform any operation on him. From this medicine, this remedy, you should give 1 dirham to an adult man and enough amount to the little ones. I have never used any other murqit, yani anesthetic, in my life. And he wrote this statement in 15th century, just 300 years before the invention of anesthetics in the Western modern medicine. These are some pictures, miniature pictures from his Cerrahiyetul Haniye, Sabuncuoğlu's book. And you will see on the left side the circumcision of a child. And I have picked some urological pictures and miniature because I am a urologist. And on the right side, you will see cystoscopic, endoscopic evaluation of an adult patient. And he gives with an endoscope through the urethra till his bladder. And on the left side, you will see the dilatation of external meatus, urethral meatus in a child. And on the right side, irrigation of the bladder on an adult male. Medical education in Ottoman medicine. The main educational institution of the Ottoman Empire was madrasa. In the Ottomans, medical education was generally given in the madrasa and Darul Shifa, and theoretical and practical information was taught to physician candidates by master-apprentice method. In the 19th century, modern medical education institutions were established by taking the West as an example, which is out of our topic tonight. The chief physician, who is called Hekim-Başı, was equivalent to the current Minister of Health. And the duties of chief physician, the Hekim-Başı, was to take care of the health of the Sultan and his family, managing health affairs, supervising physicians, to carry out the health affairs of the army. In 1850, the institution of chief physician, the Hekim-Başı institution, was abolished. And this is the list of some Ottoman hospitals built in this classical period. And some of them are, it is easy to see them on site. I would advise all of you, when you visit Turkey, to go to Edirne and Amasya especially, to see Edirne Sultan Bayezid II Darul Shifa and Amasya Darul Shifa, where the Şerafettin Sabuncuoğlu was the Hekim-Başı. Ottomans established hospitals in the 3 capitals, Bursa, Edirne, and Istanbul mainly, some princely seats in Anatolia, and various other provincial centers. The first hospital was built by Yıldırım Bayezid in Bursa, when that city served as the capital of the expanding Ottoman state in the 14th century. The new Ottoman hospitals were physically bigger than the usual size of pre-Ottoman Muslim hospitals. They employed a larger staff that displayed wider medical capabilities and a higher level of medical professionalism. Like preceding Islamic hospitals, the Ottoman hospitals too were charitable institutions. Their purpose was to heal sick patients rather than to serve as hostels or hospices, caring for the dying or chronically ill. Another example is Süleymaniye Medical Madrasa in Istanbul. It is the first Ottoman madrasa that was entirely devoted to the science of medicine. Was the one built as part of Süleymaniye Mosque complex, constructed in the middle of the 16th century by the Süleyman the Magnificent. Süleymaniye Medical Madrasa had a special importance in Ottoman medicine in the education of physicians for both public and military needs. Moreover, the medical students at the madrasa had free meals from the kitchen called imaret, and they practiced the theoretical knowledge they learn in medical school in the hospital. In the medical madrasa, there was a staff including one lecturer called mudarris, 8 students called danishment, and 3 auxiliary staff. And this is the picture of Süleymaniye Medical Madrasa. At the end of my presentation, I just mentioned a method of therapy in the Ottoman Empire, Ottoman medicine, which is music therapy for patients with mental diseases. For patients with mental disease, a psychiatric hospital was founded on the borders of the Ottoman Empire. This hospital was included in the complex, which was constructed in Edirne, the border city, titled Bayazid II Social Complex. And patients with mental disease were cured not only by medical treatment protocols, but also by music therapy in this hospital. Visiting this hospital, Evliya Çelebi, the famous world-known traveler, stated that some insane people become smart as they look at beautiful, genial faces. Yet, according to the old doctors, beautiful faces, streams, beautiful voices, musical instruments, and lyrics unburden the individuals and disinfect from the dirt of anxiety. Okay, this is what I was planning to talk about this night. And at the end of my presentation, I would like to invite all of you on behalf of the Federation of Islamic Medical Association to take part in the FIMA History of Islamic Medicine project. And I thank you for listening very much. Jazakumullah khairan kathira. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Jazakallah khair, barakallah. Many thanks, Professor Ihsan. It's a great, really, I know it's very quite broad, big topic, and it's a challenging really to summarize it in 45 minutes. It's a great to learn about Beit al-Hukma, when Harun al-Rashid used to encourage all the physicians to translate, and non-physicians to translate books and give them the weight of books gold. It's a great to know about Razi, Ibn Nafis, who wrote the as you mentioned the book. He wrote the book on Sharh Tashrih al-Qanun, and he described the pulmonary circulation over 300-400 years before William Harvey. It's a great to know about Al-Zahrawi, mashallah, is a great surgeon. And nice to know about the Al-Hakim Sharafuddin Sabunji Oglo and the Seljuki and the Uthmani medicine. I know each one is probably maybe need separate talk and separate presentation. I just wonder if there's any questions anybody would like to put any questions. Please feel free on the chat box.
Comments and contributions, maybe.
Yeah, please. I know it's a great to have overview. I mean, the first talk on the series to give some a great introduction on the great history of our Islamic medicine. Probably maybe the first question I would say from my side: how can we repeat this great history, Professor Ihsan? How can we get the meanings? How can we get? I know this probably maybe £1 million questions.
Yeah, actually, it's a very challenging and a tough question. All the time we are asking to each other this same question, either in medical field or in other fields of the science and civilization. Unfortunately, after this pause of golden age, I can say, we lost our energy, our enthusiasm to follow our great brothers in the past, and we have to encourage new blood, new generation, our students, our children, our new generation to follow the same way. How did accomplish this challenging task in the past, and if it is accomplished in the past, it means that it is doable in the future by ourselves, because we have the heritage of these great scholars and inventors and scientists. Inshallah, through this kind of activities and through FIMA and other important medical organizations, the global organizations in the Islamic world, we will follow the same pathway. And on the horizon, our next generation will be shining as our hope, as a beacon of our hope, inshallah.
Barakallah feek. We've got a question from Professor Hussam Fadel. He's asking, what is the books from the Seljuqi medical period were written? I know there's probably very little resources, because mainly it's published in Turkish language, unfortunately. We don't have too many. We're really challenging when we get into the Tubb al-Uthmani, the Ottoman medicine, because it's mainly on the Turkish language. I know we try through the Asian journal, they try to invite people like you and like other people who can write in English. But is there any books published in English?
Actually, I don't know. Maybe Dr. Hussam Fadel may know the books in English, because at that time it was only in Ottoman Turkish and Arabic, in Seljuqi and also Ottoman medicine. Later on, some of them were translated into English, but I am not aware of these English versions of these books. Maybe you or Dr. Hussam can.
Dr. Hussam, you can, if you would like to make any comment, Akhi. Dr. Hussam. Any other questions? Any other comment? We're taking from the chat box, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
I can see a couple of hands being raised anyway. There's iPhone 139. I can't see the names. Maybe. Akhi Muhammad, Dr. Muhammad, you can unmute them so they can make brief questions. Much easier to put it on the chat box.
Yes, I've asked Professor Hassan to unmute.
Yeah.
And there's a question from
this Hussam Fadel here.
Dr. Hussam.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Professor, I enjoyed very much this talk, particularly this part about the Turkish, the Seljuqian and the Turkish, because really we have very, very scarce information about it. We don't have much, at least in our area here. And I was asking the question about what the language of many of these books in the Ottoman Islamic or classical period that mentioned. Were most of them written in Turkish or Arabic, or some of them were in Arabic? In other words, if there are Arabic, some people can translate from Arabic to English or Arabic to other languages. Definitely, this is something that I myself was interested or am interested in. Also, if there are any manuscripts that can be found from this period that are, especially for my interest, are written in Arabic. So we can learn about it, because this period, we don't know much about them. We know about Al-Zahrawi and Nafis and so on, but many other of the Turkish period or the Ottoman period, we don't know. At least here, we don't know in our area.
Yeah, I think it is our duty as the Turkish scholars and scientists to translate from our own language to English. And some of them, I know that some of them were translated into English, but this is a huge corpus of medicine, and we need more effort to translate at least a majority of these products and books, inshallah, in the future.
But I'm saying, if there are some in Arabic language, there
yes.
should be some, I mean.
Yes, that's right. Actually, as I said during my presentation, the Sharif is another figure who wrote these books in Turkish, and on purpose he said that. And in his time, in the classical Ottoman time, most of the medical books were written in Arabic, as you said. So maybe for our Arabic-speaking brothers, it will be easy to translate them to English for your.
This is same can be said for Ahmed Chalabi as well, the urologist, famous urologist. He wrote in Arabic as well. I can see questions from is it Dr. Mustafa Isaka?
He is asking about the possibility of obtaining the PowerPoint presentation, and I think you have recorded the.
Inshallah, I think recording would be more than enough. Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.
Alaikum salam, brother.
Yes, thank you so much, Professor Karaman and Dr. Sharif, for organizing such a program. We are so delighted. Dr. Saka Mustafa from IMA, Uganda. And inshallah, this information will be very beautiful if we continue to share this information with the rest of the people that have not been here, because the challenge as us, the young generation, I'm a qualified doctor not many years ago, though currently doing my master's. But the current challenge we have, especially in the African society, especially in my country, we attribute most of the discoveries in medicine with the Western world, and most of the books we read are either from US and also from the UK. However, it would be a good initiative if our generation and the generations to come realize and get to understand that the great Muslims had a great contribution to the science today. Everyone is proud of. I'll be glad to be part of this project and also share this information. I wish you the best. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah khair. Barakallah.
Brother Sharif, there is a question for you, I think. He says, Aisha Abdullah says, can you please share the objectives of this project of History of Islamic Medicine?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as I mentioned before the talk, the aim really, it's very much like educational exercise. Unfortunately, we don't know too much about our history, let alone the history of medicine, let alone the history of Islamic medicine. And I always believe, I always feel very strongly, it's only the people who knows the history can repeat this history. If we don't know our history, we don't take the lessons from history, it's very difficult to repeat it. And this is probably maybe one of the aims of this project. So obviously, inshallah, we'll do some webinars, maybe once every couple of months, or maybe every 6 weeks. There'll be inshallah more people coming, and we'll be really quite welcome people to join this project. Hopefully, inshallah, the FIMA is the umbrella for this, but we've got people as well working from different areas, even outside FIMA, who would be interested to join us here, and they're very welcome to do so, inshallah. Also, we encourage people to submit articles on the history of Islamic medicine, and we will be very happy and very keen to publish this. We had a few platforms. We have a journal in BIMA, we have the BIMA, we have another journals as well within a FIMA, and we'll be more than happy to consider publications of this.
Akhi Sharif, I have seen a message from brother Dr. Najib Rahman from UK on the chat box, and he says there are a number of medical museums around the world in different parts of the world. Are there similar museums that present these Islamic medical and surgical contributions? He says. So I would like to say that in two different cities, in Amasya and Edirne, which I mentioned as the hospitals of Sultan Bayazid II and Amasya Darushifa, they have their own medical museums, and they display the instruments, the original instruments from the Ottoman time in that museums. And if you visit Turkey, definitely it is advisable to visit these museums. As well, in Istanbul, in Park, Gülhane Park, there is a museum of Islamic science and technology, or something you may. Also, you can see very important scientific contributions in the Islamic civilization in this museum.
Yes, I know. In Fas, in Morocco, the groups, they really they managed to replicate Al-Zahrawi's instrument in 2-3 different occasions, and where Brother Najib Rahman is a consultant A&E in Leeds. In fact, in Leeds main hospital in St. James, there's a little museum, medical museum, they call Takri Museum. Probably maybe Muhammad himself, Dr. Muhammad, he knows that. I can see Dr. Riyad Abu Sulaiman, he raised his hand as well. He wants to make a comment or ask questions. Please feel free.
Okay, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I'm happy to see all the brothers and talking about this important topic. And hopefully this is the first in the series, inshallah.
Inshallah.
I would like to thank Dr. Sharif Al-Ghazal for this initiative. And it has been initiated actually this year for FIMA. Professor Ihsan Karaman is one of the important contributors, mashallah, to this project. And thank you, Dr. Ihsan, for starting this series.
My pleasure.
We will be waiting for, inshallah, the other series to come, and thank for the moderators.
Inshallah, barakallah. There's somebody under Realm C15. Sorry, the names is not, I can see the hand being raised. Okay, iPhone 139. Okay, maybe a bit difficult to.
Dr. Sharif, I'm conscious of the time.
Yeah, I mean we've got maybe two minutes. We can wrap it up, please, because the whole event is actually almost an hour. I know it's evening time. Somebody still want to do the Maghrib prayer now here. So okay, inshallah we can finalize it. Barakallah fikum, jazakumullah khair. Inshallah we'll meet again in February, inshallah. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. جزاكم الله خير. بارك الله. السلام عليكم.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.